So, hi everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Biome Project with me, Emma, Roby, and this week we're really lucky to be joined by Lucy Groves, who is the project officer, and she's also a conservation biologist working for the Darrell Wildlife Conservation Trust on the amazing White Stork project. So I feel that very brief introduction doesn't even begin to cover all the amazing things you've done and the fantastic work you do with the project. So do you maybe want to say a bit more about yourself and your role?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, I'm Lucy Groves, and I've worked on the White Stork project for Darrell Wildlife Conservation Trust for the last 2.5 years now. I started off as a consultant, and then was taken on as the project officer on a contract. Before that, I was a freelance conservation biologist working on lots of different projects around West Sussex. Working with harvest mice and other native species, and also a safari guide with the NEP rewilding project in West Sussex. I was kind of at NEP already doing safaris and public engagement in other bits of projects, and the stork role came up, and they put me forward for it with Darrell, which is amazing. And before that, I was a zookeeper, so I've done quite a few different things.
Oh, wow.
I bet that's quite helpful, kind of having that balance between, I guess, that husbandry experience and then also research, especially for somewhere like NEP.
It was amazing actually, because the husbandry side of things, the captive animal husbandry, looking after the white storks and stuff, was something that they obviously wanted someone on site to help with the captive side of things. So I had that experience. I had done lots of public engagements. They were looking for that as well. And then also the research that I've been doing in my other projects too. So I was in quite a unique place really to fit all of the little bits that they wanted in the project that would normally take more than one member of staff. So I kind of just slotted in really, which was really cool.
So this is really exciting for us because NEP has been kind of on our radar as like kind of zoology bloggers and podcasters for a long time, because we've got a really strong interest in reintroduction and rewilding. And of course we saw you on the YouTube Reintroduction Summit the other day, which was fantastic, that I spent the entire day just,
it was such a good event.
It was so well put together and so many amazing people talking. It was great.
But maybe for people who are tuning in who aren't quite aware of what NEP is, or even what a white stork is, and why are we talking about storks, do you want to maybe give an overview of what the project is, the amazing work that you're doing, and kind of how it came about and where it's going and stuff?
Yeah, so the NEP Rewilding Project is based in West Sussex. It's 3,500 acres of what was intensive farmland, which has been turned over for nature. So it's been running for about 20 years now. Charlie Burrell and Isabella Tree, who own the estate and live on the estate, moved away from conventional farming because wasn't making money. They were in quite a lot of debt, and they had realised that obviously the land was suffering from, they did everything they possibly could to try and make money out of it, plough every inch, throw pesticides, herbicides, fertilizer, all the things that farmers, conventional farming was taught to do. And they realised that actually they were missing so much from the land. So started to turn it over for nature, take it out of production, and followed the kind of work of Frans Vera from the Netherlands, doing lots of stuff over there. So that was kind of the start of it, really. They took it out of production, and then they started to introduce species that would act as proxies for animals that would have been there before. So they've got the longhorn cattle, which are the proxies for the aurochs, Tamworth pigs for the wild boar, Exmoor ponies for the tarpan, and then we've got 3 different deer species. So our natives, the red and the roe deer, and then also fallow deer as well. And just seeing the land sort of recover itself, really. And the white storks come into it. It's something that Charlie and other organisations, other partners of the White Stork Project, which I can go into as well in a bit, but they were thinking about what they could reintroduce that would perhaps spark passion in people and reconnects people with nature. And obviously the usual reintroduction species kind of turned up, your wolves, your lynx and your beavers, things like that. And obviously beavers are kind of on the cards anyway. That's happening in the UK. Lynx and wolves are a little bit more of a contentious issue, especially down here in Sussex. We're quite populated, and I think they did a study, and having lynx on the site, they worked out it's like 1.5 lynx on the area of land that we've got.
Yeah.
So it's not really a viable population. But something that came up was the white storks. They're large, charismatic, easily recognisable. Despite the fact that they've not been here in hundreds of years, they're still quite interwoven within our culture. I mean, we all know that storks bring babies. It's part of the folklore and still the heritage of the country, even if we don't necessarily think about them every day. And they live near people across their range. So, they live on people's roofs across Europe. And it was decided that would be the species that would be worth giving it a go. So yeah, and it started in 2016, the White Stork Project.
No, I think it's incredibly exciting, and obviously there was something very exciting that happened sort of on the 15th of May last year, so kind of the first white stork chicks in over 600 years. So how are the storks doing this year? Are there any signs of chicks and nesting this year?
Yeah, so they're still completely overwhelmed, and they've completely caught us by surprise this year. They were 4 weeks ahead of last year. With the nesting. So we've got 7 nests at NEP this year. So we went from 3 last year, 2 of which were successful, to 7 this year, which is
amazing.
And so
yeah.
I was just going to say, we're recording this in the evening. Is that where you've been all day frantically looking after these storks?
Yeah. So I've been out at NEP all day today. It's quite a job keeping an eye on all the nests and monitoring those. Couldn't do it without my great team of volunteers who are out there all day, every day, helping me monitor these storks. But yeah, so we know that we've got confirmed 2 nests have got eggs in. But we've got 2 others where we've got individuals sitting quite tightly, so it's likely that they've also got eggs.
And does that mean you can't see into the nest because the birds are on top? Because they're big birds, aren't they, storks? They've got almost 2 meters.
Their nests are, over 1 meter wide. They can end up being almost 2 meters deep. They can weigh sort of 250 kilograms or something when they're fully built. And they get used generation after generation. So they get built on, and they're quite big things. But yeah, so if they're sitting really tight, we've got like a 30-second sort of window once they get up to swap over with the other one to get a drone up, have a quick look and get it down again, which can be a little bit difficult. One of them, we were sat there for 4 hours the other day,
blimey.
3 attempts, and before the drone was even off the ground, they were sat back down again. So yeah, they're giving us the run around this year. But yeah, so we could have chicks as early as at the end of April.
No, that would be.
very
And are
exciting.
there any sort of live cameras on them, or is it more just like you mentioned with the drones going up?
So at the moment, it's just the drone that we use purely for monitoring. So we can use that without disturbing the birds at all, which is really great. And we couldn't, have a look at the nests. Otherwise, it would mean cherry picker or climbing up into the tree, which, at this sort of sensitive stage is not something you want to be doing. Hopefully we'll have some live cameras in the future. I think we're looking at perhaps getting a couple up over this winter, ready for next season. Because it's something that people are always asking for. They're really popular. There's white stork cameras across Europe. You can go online and have a look at what they're up to. So it would be really good for public engagement, but also for the monitoring of the birds as well.
Because I think for other species, like we saw with the osprey, the ones at Poole Harbour, I mean, the number of people who tuned in to watch over lockdown who maybe weren't even interested in birds before was fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's especially over lockdown, it seems to have really, really kicked off. People are absolutely loving it. But yeah, being able to sit in the comfort of your home but be able to see something as awesome as that is really cool.
And is that a kind of a disturbance plan? Like at the moment with the birds on the nest, it's probably too risky to disturb them by putting a camera, but maybe over winter when they fly off, you can rig one up for when they come back. That's quite cool. Because I've all the work I've been doing over lockdown, I've had these live cams out of just like, there's one of bison in Poland, and I'm just there, my bison all day.
I know, it's really good, isn't it? I have a white stork one in Poland that I have on my second screen if I'm only working on one. You just keep an eye on it in the corner. But yeah, at the moment it's they're too active and it's too sensitive to get up there and put anything up now. They're quite sensitive to that change as well, the disturbance to start off with, but something will look different and it could put them off completely. So yeah, we'll get something up over the winter, and then hopefully they'll just build on top of where they are now. And it's really frustrating. So in 2019 we had a pair. The first pair tried to nest. They had 3 eggs which didn't hatch. They were quite young at that stage. So like early 2020 we were like, right, let's get a camera up. Springwatch came, they put a camera up, and unbeknownst to us, the pair had already started nesting elsewhere, so they just didn't nest in that tree. So it's just typical wildlife.
And obviously it's a very difficult time at the moment for everyone in the middle of the pandemic we're in. How have you found that? Has that I assume there are positives and negatives to the pandemic.
Yeah, so last year was really difficult. So this time last year, everybody was in complete lockdown and we didn't know what was happening. It was all really, really new. And we had to cancel all of our volunteers. So it was just me. I was out and a couple of members of staff who live on site at NEP. We were looking after the storks on site, and I was out every day doing all of the monitoring, which was super lovely. Because I was out every day doing stuff, and having NEP pretty much to yourself is awesome. But that made things quite difficult. There's a lot of stuff that has to be done at this time of the year leading up to, juveniles coming from Cotswold Wildlife Park, organising BTO licenses for GPS tagging. So I have to do quite a lot of office work as well. So that made things quite difficult and having to be out on site. And also for my volunteers, missed out on the first they didn't, because by the time they'd hatched they were all back out again, but missed out on that early excitement, and like I said, I couldn't do it without my volunteers. And then over the summer, the storks were such a big sign of hope for people. We had storks flying around the UK, and I was getting emails from people who were just birding from their garden because they were in lockdown, and just saying how wonderful it was to see the storks, and what a sign of hope it was, and how it made their month, and just really, really lovely feedback. And I think the storks really have sort of struck a chord with quite a lot of people across the UK. Lots of people are talking about them. Once things started to open up again, I mean, we had nearly 30,000 people visit NEP to see the storks.
Wow, that's impressive.
Everybody wanted to come and see them, and talking to people on site and that, and just bringing smiles to people's faces. It was amazing, which is what we wanted from the storks. It was that's the whole point or one of the big points of releasing the storks is that public engagement and getting people excited and passionate. I get emails from people who have never done a day's worth of bird watching in their life, but are super excited because they've been able to see one of the storks, and it gets them talking about other wildlife and gets them in that way. So yeah, it's been amazing in that sort of respect.
And that's quite interesting. You mentioned that the engagement has been so strong. And again, coming back to what we said before about how we thought lynx and wolves were a bit far off, but storks we can really do right. What is it, do you think, about storks in particular that just they don't have that edge to them that people think? I mean, I know they're not carnivores with lynx and eagles and wolves, but we from an outside perspective, it seems like the engagement has all been entirely positive with the storks. I don't know of any kind of opposition to it. I mean, what is there to oppose, really?
I mean, really early on in the project, there was quite a lot of opposition, and there has been sort of a question over the evidence that they were ever truly native, and things like that. as with all reintroductions, there are always people that don't agree with it, or perhaps don't think that that is the best way for people to be spending their money. Some of the arguments we get is, well, the money that's been spent on the stalks could have been spent on, lapwing or, something else. But with the stalks, they get people's attention, and, they're big, they're bold, they come close to people, on people's roofs, and really easy recognizable. And there was just something about them whilst they're in flight. They're so graceful and just
they're beautiful,
really, really lovely. But it means that we can get talking to people about habitat restoration and wetland creation and that kind of thing, which improves the land for storks, but everything else under the storks, the little brown jobs that don't get the attention that they need, but perhaps using an emblem like the white stork can help those species in other ways. So early on, quite a little bit of sort of contention with some people, and with reintroductions you get that. I mean, we have people that they're plastic storks, they're reintroduced, they're not, I can't tick it on my bird list, or and the same with the white-tailed eagles. They're all having the same sorts of comments. But ultimately, the general public, now I barely ever get anything negative about the storks. People are so excited about them, which is amazing.
And I'm quite interested, what's your opinion as someone who is actively working in reintroduction? Me and Emma have come across this a lot because, we do a lot of podcasting on it, we do a lot of research on it, and, it becomes quite evident that UK is actually often one of the last countries to kind of take up a rewilding initiative, and we're always quite hesitant about it, and we seem to do a lot more umming and ahhing than opposed to certain other countries. And I think there's quite lots of interesting theories kind of bouncing around as to why that is. Do you have any thoughts as to why that is?
I mean, I find sort of the British we're quite reserved. It's very much in our culture to be fairly reserved, and even if we're very excited about something, we are still quite reserved about it.
That's true.
I think that's a very British thing. But also that the UK is perceived as a very small island, perhaps quite populated. Do we have big enough spaces to be able to reintroduce wolves and lynx and things like that? But also I think we lost a lot of these species so long ago that we're so disconnected from it that having those, thinking about reintroducing those things, perhaps being reluctant to change, is possibly something that plays quite a big picture. I mean, traditional conservation, and I come from a traditional conservation background, and I love it, and it has its place definitely for species protection and recovery, and dealing with threatened species. But also the rewilding is a really big thing as well, and something I do find within this industry does tend to be kind of the them and us culture. I think if everybody, if the conservationists, the rewilders and the farmers were all working together, then everything would be great. But everybody has their own way of doing things, and people have been set in their ways for a really long time. And I think the rewilding, the reintroduction movement is gaining pace, and it has done over the last year or so in particular. And I think it's great, but I do think that everybody needs to work together ultimately.
We've come across that quite a lot, and we've done a couple of episodes on beavers, we've done some on lynx, and there is a lot of quite divisive rhetoric that we've kind of come across, and there's some perhaps, I don't want to say unsavoury, but not particularly helpful kind of actions being taken by people, and it really makes you think that actually to move forward we really need to depolarize the argument as much as we can and get everyone involved as much as we can, I think.
There's a lot of politics involved. I think. That's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of politics, and I'm all for pushing forward, getting things reintroduced, but also from my experience, especially with the White Stork Project, is there are certain things that need to be done before that can happen. There are these processes that should be, the public consultation and all that kind of stuff. It's stuff that should be done, and it all helps in the long run. We've now got locals who are so excited about the storks, and they've kind of taken the storks on as their own. And without those locals really, really involved and happy with the project, we wouldn't be where we are today. So, you know, like you say, it's getting all of those people involved, getting everybody talking, and trying not to polarize it quite so much.
And I guess it's also about recognising, like, addressing if any of the threats are still there, which they would have faced in the past. I mean, we did an episode on the white-tailed seagull reintroduction in Ireland, and kind of looking at how there was a massive protest when the chicks turned up at the airport with the farmers, because they just hadn't had enough information and they thought they were going to lose a load of lambs. So I think, yeah, that community aspect is so important.
Yeah, it really is. And that sort of the education side as well, and it's something that, you know, we talk about at NEP and that quite a lot. There's quite a lot of these myths and stuff that people believe in, like beavers eating fish. You know, it is something that comes up all the time, and it's like, no, they're vegetarian, like pure vegetarian. But without that sort of, you know, communication and the education and getting the local stakeholders and stuff involved, you continue to come up against those sort of brick walls, and people have made their mind up. They don't want to know, but it's that education that you really need.
Are there any misconceptions about storks then that perhaps we wouldn't think of?
So, I mean, one of the common things that comes up is the thought that they are going to predate on protected species, so that they're going to target ground nesting species like lapwing and things like that. They are quite often comes up, and actually it comes up at every talk I do. I get a question about, are they going to eat so and so, or, you know, the thing with the storks is they are generalists. They are hugely adaptable, and they will take pretty much whatever they come across, but they don't target a specific species. So they're not going to go to a wetland and go, well, there's lapwing chicks all across this, I'm going to go and eat every single one of them. You know, if their method of hunting is they stalk through grassland and wetland, and if they disturb something whilst they're moving along, they'll peck at it and they'll eat it. So yeah, they will eat frogs, they'll eat fish, they'll eat small mammals if they manage to catch one. They may eat a ground nesting chick, they might eat an egg, but they're not going to go and eat every single one on a site. And predominantly they eat insects. So, you know, people don't realise that actually such a big bird are going to be eating 30% of their diet is earthworms.
Oh, wow.
You know, they're eating earthworms, they're eating insects, and they eat what is abundant at that time. So the field that we had one of the nests in last year at NET, it was just full of grasshoppers. Like every footstep you took, they were jumping all over the place. And the adults spent most of their time just picking around at the grasshoppers. That's predominantly what they ate. So, you know, they're not going to go and hunt a specific species. They're not going to target a specific species. So, you know, across Europe, they eat rubbish off the landfill sites. So, you know, they'll take what they can get, but they're not going to, you know, wipe out our UK lapwing species or other ground nesting birds like that. So that's one of the main misconceptions with the storks.
And of course the bringing of babies through windows, but
of course, yeah, bringing babies, that's definitely another one.
Because I guess another quite unusual thing about the storks at NEP is the fact that the first population anyway was injured and kind of unable to fly. And so often in conservation, I feel like that group of injured or not fully able to go back into the wild, they're kind of discounted from any conservation efforts. Do you think kind of the White Stork Project proves that animals which are injured still hold conservation value?
Yeah, I think so, definitely, and especially with the storks, and that's mainly due to their behaviour and the way that they, you know, their ecology, the way that they live. So yeah, the first birds that we had come to the project were injured in Poland. Most of them juveniles. Unfortunately, across Europe, a lot of them hit power lines. They also nest on electricity pylons and ridiculous things like that. So, you know, a lot of them do get injured. And the birds that are rehabilitated at Warsaw. They were keeping quite a lot of the birds themselves. Any that could be re-released were re-released. But so they had lots of these sort of disabled birds, if you like, that, you couldn't fly. Most of them had lost bits of wings or a whole wing because of having to have it amputated. But that was a great source of birds for us, because to make the project work and to make these birds want to be at Knepp and the surrounding area is to have a static population, so that population that can't fly, and they act like a magnet for any that might be flying over. And it's worked really, really well. We had 2 wild birds land in the pen about 3 months after they first arrived back in 2015.
Wow.
So,
good luck.
Yeah, I know. And if you think about it, I mean, we get about 20 to 30 visitors, vagrant white storks every year from the continent. But they don't stay to breed because we don't have any resident populations. And once they've lost a colony, that's it. They won't return to that area. So by having this sort of like magnet of white storks, you think about a white stork flying 1,000 meters up, it's going to be able to see a population of white storks from up there. So yeah, we had them land in the pen, which is great. And also those birds, they can still breed, they can still behave normally, apart from the fact that they can't fly. So they'll act as a static breeding population as well within the enclosure, with their juveniles being able to fully fledge and join our other juveniles.
And that's what I find really fascinating, because it kind of brings into the whole point about why the UK is different. Obviously, being an island, for most species, there isn't natural emigration into it. But I guess that kind of means that in any one year, we will have storks in Britain just flying about, just over, and you kind of think, well, surely they were extinct in Britain, but you remember, oh, it's a bird, there'll probably be 1 or 2. I'm just gonna keep looking out my window now.
We've got them all over the place at the moment. So we have got some unringed individuals which are likely to be wild vagrants. But also we've got a number of our birds flying around the country as well. I think we've got 6 in Derbyshire at the moment. So they are kind of all over the place at the moment. So all of the sightings, so yeah, if you see a white stork, report the sighting via our website. And that comes through to me, and then I can map out where our individuals are. And also, if we get lots of reported sightings of individuals, I can map where they're going, where they're feeding, and look at their behaviour as well, which is really cool. But yeah, so the reintroduction, we've got that static group, but we've also then got a hefted group. So a group that are free flying, but they are resident. They know that Knepp is their home. So having that anchor of the static birds helps, but also we keep them on site for a couple of winters before we release them. So we keep them in large aviaries. And then the third sort of phase is our juveniles that we release. So captive bred juveniles from Cotswold Wildlife Park, and they facilitate that migratory population. So they are captive bred at Cotswold, so they come to Knepp for a couple of weeks to sort of learn where our storks are before being released. And then, yeah, they're free to go on migration, which most of them do, which is fantastic.
Because white storks, they have this impressive migration, don't they? It's how far do they travel?
So they can travel all the way down to South Africa.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so the population in sort of more southern Europe tend to go down to that southern part of Africa, but sort of more central and northern Europe, they go down to Morocco mainly. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that is really far. And so you mentioned sort of the mapping aspect. Are all your birds GPS tagged, or is that just based on sighting?
So a small proportion of the birds are GPS tagged. So we have managed to tag 16 birds out of our juveniles so far. So we've done 8 out of each cohort for the last 2 years, which is fantastic. And the data we get from those is unbelievable, and fills in all of the gaps that we would have otherwise. But all of our other birds, or all of the birds, are ringed with a large blue ring, which starts with GB and then has a letter or number combination. So most of the ones that are here in the UK that I know where they are is coming in just from public sightings of them, which is amazing. But that obviously is quite limited, whereas the GPS tags show us really fine scale data. We can look at how far they're flying, what speed they're flying, how high, and when they're resting, when they're feeding, we can look at quite a lot of detail with that, which is amazing.
So in total, how many white storks are there at Knepp in the whole colony? Is that the whole British population now? Because I read there were potentially two other sites as well which might come into play.
Yeah, so we've got roughly 50 at NEP. We've got, because of the free flyers, it kind of goes up and down a little bit, but that's mainly at NEP. And then we have two other satellite sites down here in the southeast. So we've got one in East Sussex at Wadhurst, and then one in Surrey, which is at Wintershaw Estate. So the idea is that it creates like this little hub in the southeast, closest to where they would be crossing the channel. So as soon as they're over the channel, they can see that we've got quite a good population of storks, and they'll visit one of those sites or return to the site that they were at for a period of time.
Because obviously that's quite a lot of that's already 3 different sites, and I understand there's quite an extensive partnership at play kind of with the running of the White Stork project. What are the different roles of the different partners in that?
Yeah, so we've obviously got the NEP estate, which is what I kind of call the nucleus for the project. It's where we've got most of our birds. We've got the largest sort of enclosure, and obviously we've now got the first breeding birds as well. And then our 2 other sites, like I say, Wadhurst and Wintershaw. We've then got Cotswold Wildlife Park, who I've mentioned a couple of times already, and they undertake all of our captive breeding. They've got a population of white storks there in the Cotswolds, and they rear all the juveniles for the project. They also help with they undertake all of the imports that we had earlier on in the project, and quarantine all the birds and all of that kind of stuff. So they've got a load of experience and knowledge with the captive husbandry of the birds, and help advise all of the different sites around that. And fantastic vet on hand as well, should we need it. We've then got the Roy Dennis Wildlife Foundation. So we work with Tim McCrill from there, who is fantastic. And obviously they've got all the experience of species reintroductions with the osprey and the white-tailed eagles. So yeah, an absolute wealth of knowledge from them, which is fantastic. We then got Durrell Wildlife Conservation Trust, obviously. So we came in later in the project, so only in about 2018. And we were brought in to help with kind of overall coordination of the project. And obviously they fund my role as the project officer as well. So we undertake all the public engagement and all the post-release monitoring. So yeah, it's quite a full-on job. It's great. It's really, really varied. I do everything from volunteer management, being out on site, to GPS tagging and TV interviews and all that kind of stuff. So it's really, really varied. And I do all the social media and stuff too. So but yeah, Durrell are kind of running that side of things.
I've been following the social media on the Instagram and things, and I've been loving the maps of Europe with all the migration lines. And I keep thinking, oh well, I'd like to spend my winters in Morocco as well. But it's just been it's made me think that migration must be such an interesting factor when you're talking about reintroduction, because with the bison which are happening at Blean, they're not going to go anywhere. You can just plop them down and they do their thing. And it'd be it's the same with beavers, I guess. They're not going to leave. But how did it affect how you were kind of planning this project when presumably at some point in the year half your species just bog off to Morocco? How do you know they're going to come back?
Yeah, I know, but that's the thing. I think that's one of the exciting things with the project, actually. There's so many unanswered questions about what's actually going to happen with these birds. So yeah, the kind of the phases that I mentioned, the static birds, the resident birds, and the juveniles, is it's a methodology that was developed by a Swedish project who started reintroducing white storks in the 80s. And they did the first 2, so they'd got their static birds, they'd got their free-flying residents, but they worked out that actually none of them were migrating, none of them were going anywhere. Probably staying in Sweden over the winter is possibly not the best idea because of lack of food and the cold weather. So they actually had to start supplementary feeding over the winter, and then you've got this kind of static population that's not really doing anything. And they decided that to facilitate that migration, they needed to do this juvenile release. And that was one thing that we were really keen on very early on in the project, is that we undertake these juvenile releases, for us to have a natural population of white storks, migration is a huge part of that. So we want a fully migrating population of white storks. So it's great. I mean, the first release we did in 2019, we had no idea what these juveniles were going to do. Quite a lot of people said they'll never cross the channel. They'll never do it. You know, these birds are using thermal updrafts to cross large bodies, you know, to migrate, and they don't cross large bodies of water because of that, because you don't get that thermal updraft. So everyone was like, nah, they're not going to go. And we released them, and 2 days after we released them, one of them crossed the channel, and she just went off. That was it. It was almost like she knew exactly where she was going. And yeah, she went all the way down to Morocco. She became our first bird to fully migrate.
She woke up and thought, Marrakesh for the winter is where I'm going.
But yeah, it was really amazing to be able to watch as well, because obviously we GPS tagged 8 of them, and yeah, it was like she knew exactly what she was doing. So these birds have got that instinct, despite the fact that they're captive bred and had, you know, never had that experience. You know, their parents probably hadn't even done that, because they had been rescued from Poland as well. And there were questions over, you know, which route will they take, because there's 2 distinct routes because of the bodies of water. So yeah, either east over the Bosphorus into Levant and up the Nile Valley. That tends to be a lot of the Polish birds, they tend to go that way. And then there's the western route, which goes over the Strait of Gibraltar. And, you know, the birds from France, Spain and Portugal tend to go down there. So there was a question over, you know, these guys are, you know, bred from Polish birds. Will they try and go east, or will they follow west? You know, nobody knew. Marge hit Luxembourg and obviously met some other storks, and she'd started to go east and then just headed west all the way down. And yeah, she went all the way down, which is amazing.
So do you think that she learned? So she had the innate instinct, headed off south, and then followed other birds going west, and so kind of broke away from what her parents might have done.
Yeah, it's possible that, you know, if she hadn't have met it, I mean, we don't know for certain whether she met wild white storks, but it's very, very likely that she did. It's possible that she might have changed direction anyway, but yeah, she could have gone east, but because she met up with those other storks, it's likely that she then just thought, right, okay, well, I'll have to follow where everyone else is going. But, you know, these juvenile white storks, even in the wild, have only got a 30% survival rate in their first year because of that migration. It's a hugely risky journey to make. And because they're inexperienced, if they get buffeted off course by wind, they struggle to get back on course, and, you know, they end up in all sorts of strange places, or, you know, using too much energy and not surviving. So, you know, it's a huge journey for them, and if they can make it past their first migration, then they've got a good chance of survival.
So that amazing bird you were talking about, Marge, I was looking on, I think it was on the Instagram the other day. Is it that if she's on her way back to the UK, but where is she at the moment then?
Yeah, so she's on her way back, and I've literally become obsessed with checking the GPS data sort of 10 times a day. So there's a bit of a delay with the GPS data, and it only comes through sort of every 3 to 4 hours. So it's not come through yet. But yeah, so she's on her way back, and she was blazing her way back. So at the weekend, sort of Friday, Saturday, she travelled 200 kilometres in 24 hours.
Ooh, wow.
Which is amazing.
She caught the sun in Marrakesh. She wants to come home.
yeah. So, but she's actually taken a little bit of a rest stop yesterday and today, and she's just north of Dijon in France. So, yeah, but she's following the same route, almost identically on the route that she came down. So she's following the same track coming back up, which is...
That's so cool.
And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, in the next few days that she may make it back to the UK.
That would be so exciting, because that would be the first juvenile, right, that would actually complete the full migration.
Yeah, it will be. And yeah, we'll be cracking open the bubbly, I think.
That's so exciting. So I've actually booked to come to Knepp and do a stork tour in May, I think. So hopefully Marge will be there and I can see Marge and be like, hi, we were talking about you.
Yeah, hopefully that would be amazing. We'll all be so excited if she makes it all the way back to the UK. And that's the other thing, we don't know. She could stay in Luxembourg with her friends that she met on her way south, but we just don't know. So, but I'm hoping she makes it back.
No, that'd be so exciting. I think one kind of final question I wanted to ask was, I was listening to a podcast I think you did pre the Rewilding Reintroduction Summit, and you were talking a bit about the Stork School program in terms of like pairing schools up along the Stork route so that they could talk to each other. Could you maybe explain a little bit about that, because I thought that sounded brilliant.
Yeah, so we're still really early in the development stage for the schools programme, and currently looking for sourcing funding for it, because it will require an extra member of staff. I don't think I can take on that job as well as everything else. But yeah, some of the ideas are, getting our local schools really involved, and perhaps, each of the schools having their own stork with a GPS tag on. And yeah, trying to link up schools along that migratory route with each other, kind of like almost like an exchange, I suppose. So yeah, learning about the different cultures and what the storks mean to different people, and learning about the migration and all the different habitats and things like that. But yeah, really early development stages, lots of really cool ideas floating around, but I think that would be awesome.
That sounds incredible. I think the last question which popped into my head, having chatted about these storks, what is it in Derbyshire that they're hanging around Derbyshire for? There's just I don't know. Are there any marshes? Like what's so cool about Derbyshire? Derbyshire's a very cool place, but
I don't know. So it's 6 storks that have been kind of on a bit of a journey over the last few days. So they were in Essex a couple of days ago. And yeah, they just seem to be doing a little bit of a tour of the UK at the moment.
Oh, nice.
And
they're seeing all the
keep your eyes
sights.
open for storks, definitely.
No, but I've definitely got fingers crossed for Marge coming back. I think it's very, very exciting. And yeah, I just guess from both of us to say a huge thank you for taking the time to speak to us. I mean, we absolutely think the White Stork Project is incredible. So it's great hearing about it from someone who's actually on the ground doing the amazing work that you're doing. So I'm sure the storks say thank you if they could speak.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk about the Stork Project.
Of course. Is there anything you'd like to tell our viewers about where they can find the Stork Project and get involved and see all your cool safari work and the tracking and the maps? The maps are my favourite. I love the maps.
Yeah, I tend to geek out over the maps a little bit. Yeah, so you can find information out about the White Stork Project at www.whitestorkproject.org, and you can follow us on Twitter at Project Stork, and on Facebook and Instagram at White Stork Project. Yeah. So, and if you see a stork anywhere, whether you see that it's got a ring on or it hasn't got a ring on, or
baby
whatever,
in the mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Report it to us via the website. We've got a form on there which really helps with all of our data collection.
So if any of our viewers are in Derbyshire, keep an eye out, please.
Yeah, but that's great. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Cool. Well, thanks both very much, and I'll probably see you for your stork.
Yes. I'll email you and tell you what day I'm coming, because I'm very excited to see Marge.
Yeah, that'll be me. So I'll see you then. Nice to meet you.
Fantastic. Lovely to meet you. Thank you so much.
So that was our fantastic chat with Lucy Groves of the White Stork Project. That was so exciting for us because we just nerd out so much. And I really want to know what those storks are doing in Derbyshire. But thank you very much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Please do check out the White Stork Project. Like, comment and subscribe, and let us know what your thoughts are about migration and reintroductions and all the fun things we talked about. All our kind of links and where you can find all our work is in the bio below, either on the Biome YouTube or on our website or on our Instagrams. If you'd like to check out a bit more of what me and Emma do, we are at Emma Hodson Wildlife on Instagram and at Roby Watkinson Wildlife on Instagram. And on that note, we will see you next time. Bye!
Bye!